What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American, here today to react and learn about the King's speech on the new UK government's plans for the future. So, from what I understand, this took place very recently at the state opening of Parliament, where the King basically presented a speech that was outlining the future plans for the UK under the new government leadership. The UK just had an election. There's a new leadership in the government. And I thought this was very interesting, actually, because I didn't know that the king talked about this kind of stuff. I actually thought that royalty in the UK kind of went out of their way to not be political. So I was actually kind of surprised to see that this had happened. The king is outlining the government's plans. I didn't know that he even talked about that. So basically, as an American who knows next to nothing about politics in the UK, this just sounds extremely interesting and very helpful, I think, for explaining to me what the future of the UK is basically gonna look like, right? So, with that being said, let's take a look.
My Lords and members of the House of Commons, my government will govern in service to the country. My government's legislative programme will be mission-led and based upon the principles of security, fairness and opportunity for all.
I mean, I'm a little confused. He's saying my government. Did he write this speech? That's important. That's important for me to know. I'm not sure that he wrote this speech. This might be like something he's just reading, because he's talking like he runs the government. He's like, my government will X, Y, and Z. So maybe the king is just reading this? Is that possible? That his job is just to read this speech? It's not really the king's words. That would make a lot more sense to me, actually. Because I was pretty sure the king is not meant to be all that political, right? And give his opinion or his plans or... Yeah, I think that sounds actually more right to me, now that I think about it.
Stability will be the cornerstone of my government's economic policy.
Okay.
And every decision will be consistent with its fiscal rules. It will legislate to ensure that all significant tax and spending changes are subject to an independent assessment by the Office for Budget Responsibility.
That's good. I have to say, I did not know how dense this was going to be. This is very like... this is like literally talking about the economic policy of the UK, and I mean, it sounds good so far. I just didn't know. There's no fluff here. Like, this is very, very much written by a politician, I think. So the budget, spending, and taxes of the UK are going to be heavily scrutinized during this new government leadership, and I think no matter who you are, that sounds good, I think.
Bills will be brought forward to strengthen audit and corporate governance alongside pension investment.
Okay.
Securing economic growth will be a fundamental mission. My government will seek a new partnership with both business and working people and help the country move on from the recent cost of living challenges by prioritizing wealth creation for all communities.
Oh, so again, as an American, I'm really kind of out of the loop on a lot of this stuff, like the troubles and the hardships that the UK has been facing. Apparently, much like the United States, the UK is facing some financial, I don't know, trouble? Economic hardship, you might say. Inflation is certainly running rampant in the United States. Housing is as unaffordable as it's ever been. Prices of goods are like outrageously high, and Is that kind of thing been happening in the UK, I suppose? I think it's been happening around the world. And this new government leadership is basically like, that's going to be our first and foremost what we're going to try to tackle and focus on expanding the UK economy. I don't know exactly how they're going to accomplish that, but that sounds like a good thing.
My ministers will establish an industrial strategy council. It is my government's objective to see rising living standards in all nations and regions in the United Kingdom. My ministers will get Britain building, including through planning reform, as they seek to accelerate the delivery of high-quality infrastructure and housing.
So basically, man, they're making a lot of promises here. Are these the promises that this new government leadership made during the campaign? Like, were they focusing a lot on, because so far we're just talking about the financial struggles of the UK and how they plan on addressing that. That sounds like maybe what's at the top of the mind for most people, or at least it's the very first thing we're talking about in this speech. So financial hardship seems to be a big issue in the UK by the sound, just by what they're talking about.
They will also pursue sustainable growth by encouraging investment in industry, skills, and new technologies. My government is committed to making work pay and will legislate to introduce a new deal for working people, to ban exploitative practices and enhance employment rights. It will
This really, this is so interesting. I got to take a step back here for a second and just say, I never have ever. I've seen the king speak a few times in some videos. I've never seen him talk about stuff like this. It's kind of weird. Like, he never talks about policies and government and laws and finances but again, I think he's just reading the speech. Yeah, this is the outline of the UK government's plans. So again, I think he's just reading it, but it's still like kind of funny to me.
will seek to establish the appropriate legislation to place requirements on those working to develop the most powerful artificial intelligence models.
Oh, wow. Again, I never expected to see the king of the UK talk about artificial intelligence. But that's true, though. Here in America, like AI, how much it should be regulated and controlled and oversight over AI, that's kind of an issue that's been talked about here in America, too.
My government believes that greater devolution of decision-making is at the heart of a modern dynamic economy.
Oh, that's him, right? That is the Prime Minister of the UK. Is he the Prime Minister already? Like, now that the election is over, does that happen instantly? Instantaneously? Is he the Prime Minister? Because in the United States, it takes some time after our election for the new president to be like ratified and put into office. There's a delay. So something I'm kind of wondering about.
And is a key driver of economic growth. And my ministers will introduce an English devolution bill.
Devolution of decision-making? I'm not really sure what that means. De-evolution of decision-making? Making it more simple? Decision-making more simple? Maybe there's too many people. Like, I can see a criticism of, like, the process being too convoluted, too many, like, people and decision-makers, and nothing gets done. Is simplifying that? Is that what devolution of decision-making means?
Legislation will be introduced to give new powers to metro mayors and combined authorities. This will support local growth plans that bring economic benefit to communities.
Okay. Again, a lot of talk about economic development.
A bill will be introduced to allow local leaders to take control of their local bus services.
Oh,
My ministers will bring forward legislation to improve the railways by reforming rail franchising, establishing Great British Railways, and bringing train operators into public ownership.
okay. Oh, some of this stuff I'm trying not to get too opinionated here because I will be the first to admit I don't know anything about this stuff. I don't know what's best for the UK or, but with that being said, focusing on railways, building train railways, that sounds good. I think the UK is already doing a lot better job at that than the United States anyway.
Taken together, these policies will enhance Britain's position as a leading industrial nation and enable the country to take advantage of new opportunities that can promote growth and wealth creation.
There it is again, growth and wealth creation.
My government recognizes the urgency of the global climate challenge and the new job opportunities that can come from leading the development of the technologies of the future.
Okay.
It is committed to a clean energy transition, which will lower energy bills for consumers over time.
This sounds good. Talking about clean energy, renewable energy, maybe electrifying stuff, cars and buses and whatnot. And that hasn't been a huge issue in the United States, I'm going to be honest. We have an election coming up soon ourselves, so I'm kind of comparing all of these issues in the UK with the issues we focus on here in America. And it's interesting, there's a lot of overlap, especially with the economic troubles. But as far as like going green and clean energy, that hasn't really been a big topic in America, sadly. It's nice to hear the UK cares about the environment.
A bill will be introduced to set up Great British Energy, a publicly owned clean power company
Oh, wow.
headquartered in Scotland,
Oh,
which will help accelerate investment in renewable energy such as offshore wind.
oh, wind power. They're creating a whole a new British energy company based around just clean energy. That's news to me.
Legislation will be brought forward to help the country achieve energy independence and unlock investment in energy infrastructure.
Yeah. Nice.
A bill will be introduced to support sustainable aviation fuel production. My government recognizes the need to improve water quality, and a bill will be introduced to strengthen the powers of the water regulator.
Water quality. This is so interesting. It's basically just an outline of all the troubles or problems that the UK has been facing that as an American, I've never really heard about. So this is really interesting to me, even if I'm hearing about this kind of way after the fact. Water quality? Is that an issue in the UK? Water quality? Really?
My government will seek to strengthen the border and make streets safer. A bill
Wait a minute. The border?
strengthen the border and make streets safer.
The border? The UK border? What border? The UK is islands. Like, I'm not crazy here, am I? Is this talking about people coming in and out of the UK? Because in the United States, when we talk about our border, which has been a huge political issue for this year, we're talking about like a physical border between the United States and Mexico. But in the UK, when you talk about the border, I'm not really sure what that means. I guess even though it's an island, like is there illegal immigration? That's the huge talking point in the US, illegal immigration. Is that a thing in the UK? I just haven't heard like the UK and its border talked about in America. That is, maybe this is much more talked about in the UK. I'm sure, but I'm not really sure what it means.
A bill will be introduced to modernize the asylum and immigration system,
Oh, it is.
establishing a new border security command and delivering enhanced counter-terror powers to tackle organized immigration crime.
Wow, it is talking about immigration. Wow. That I had no idea that this was an issue in the UK.
Legislation will be brought forward to strengthen community policing, give the police greater powers to deal with antisocial behavior, and strengthen support for victims.
More police power. What is going on in the UK? I feel like there's some stuff going on in the UK that I really haven't heard about all that much. Strengthening police power, and is that necessary? Are most of the people of the UK in favor of all this? I guess so, because this is literally the new elected government, right?
Measures will be introduced to improve the safety and security of public venues and help keep the British public safe from terrorism.
Wow. I didn't know that the UK thought all that much about the danger of terrorism. Of course, that's something you should think about as a nation. You should think about that. I didn't know that that was like a looming danger that was on the top of the mind of the UK people, like domestic terrorism. That's terrifying.
My government will bring forward plans to halve violence against women and girls. My ministers will seek to raise educational standards and break down barriers to opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, also, the more I've listened to this, the more to me it's completely clear this is not the king's words. This is way too political. This is like a government plan. There's no way this is the king's. He's giving the speech, but these are not his words.
Action will be taken to get people back in employment following the impact of the pandemic. A bill will be introduced to raise standards in education and promote children's well-being.
Okay.
Measures will be brought forward to remove the exemption from value-added tax for private school fees, which will enable the funding of 6,500 new teachers.
Okay. We're getting a little in the weeds here. We're getting a bit specific. I'm trying to follow along.
My government will establish Skills England, which will have a new partnership with employers at its heart. And my ministers will reform the apprenticeship levy.
Okay.
Legislation will be introduced to give greater rights and protections to people renting their homes, including ending no-fault evictions and reforming grounds for possession.
This has been somewhat of a talking point in the United States, certainly in the last 2 years or so, when renters' rights, because everything's becoming so expensive and people can't afford their rent, and then that would mean they're kicked out on the streets. It's a tough balance because you want the renters to like earn the fair market value of what they're renting. But you also don't want to throw people out on the street who can't afford a place to live. That's not good either. Neither is good.
Draft legislation will be published on leasehold and commonhold reform. A bill will be introduced to establish an independent football regulator to ensure greater sustainability in the game and strengthen protections for fans.
Really? Football regulation? Look at the audience. There's people laughing. There's people smiling at that. It's like all this super serious stuff that we've been talking about, super serious. And then randomly it's like, and we're gonna fix football regulations. It's like, oh, okay, cool. But that's probably not the most important thing when we're talking about people losing their homes and jobs, and it's kind of funny.
My government will improve the National Health Service as a service for all, providing care on the basis of need, regardless of the ability to pay.
The ability to pay? I thought you had universal health coverage in the UK. What's all this talk about ability to pay? I didn't know that the NHS in the UK was under scrutiny or criticism. This is like so interesting. This is really interesting hearing about basically what the UK government views as things that need to be fixed in the UK, basically. This is stuff that we don't really hear about in the United States because we're just honestly we're focused on fixing our own problems and what our problems are. So, this is actually a really interesting insight for me.
It will seek to reduce the waiting times, focus on prevention, and improve mental health provision for young people.
Okay.
It will ensure mental health is given the same attention and focus as physical health. My ministers will legislate to modernize the Mental Health Act so it is fit for the 21st century.
Okay.
A bill will be introduced to progressively increase the age at which people can buy cigarettes and impose limits on the sale and marketing of vapes.
Oh, vapes. The king said The king said vapes. That's funny to me. Oh, what a time to be alive. They're going to increase the age to purchase cigarettes in the UK. I had no idea that was like a policy people cared about.
My ministers will also legislate to restrict advertising of junk food to children, along with the sale of high caffeine energy drinks to children.
Oh, junk food and energy drinks. No more advertising towards children. That's probably a good. Like, if we're being honest, most Americans, and I myself would be inclined to say, let the people do what they want. Let them eat and drink as they please. Freedom to eat and drink bad stuff. But if we're talking about children, if we're being objective here, decreasing their access to junk food and energy drinks might not be what they want, but you can't really argue that it's got to have a positive benefit on their health, right? Like, someone should ban me from junk food, you know? Like, if there's a law that just said, Tyler can't buy junk food, that's the law, just me. I would be annoyed, but it'd probably make me live a lot longer, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of a trade-off between freedom and what's good for you, and having the right to choose to do things that are unhealthy. I should have the right to do unhealthy things if I want to, you know. There's that whole argument.
A draft bill will be brought forward to ban conversion practices. My government will take steps to help rebuild trust and foster respect. Legislation will be brought forward to introduce a duty of candor for public servants.
Increasing trust in the government. I really, I love that. I wish that our politicians would talk about ways that they can foster and increase trust in the government, because I think trust in our government is near all-time lows in the United States. So that's an important issue here that I don't really hear about, trust. I like that.
A bill will be introduced to establish a statutory armed forces commissioner to act as a strong, independent champion for our gallant armed forces and their families.
Okay.
Legislation on race equality will be published in draft to enshrine the full right to equal pay in law. My government will strengthen its work with the devolved governments in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, so that the best outcomes possible are delivered for citizens across the United Kingdom.
Yeah. Is that a problem? Like a cohesive government across the United Kingdom? Because I'm sure the government is kind of partitioned into Northern Ireland and Scotland and England and Wales, but the UK has to be cohesive as a whole for positive outcomes and for anything really to be done, like, cohesively. So that makes sense.
My ministers will establish a new Council of the Nations and Regions to renew opportunities for the Prime Minister, heads of devolved governments, and mayors of combined authorities to collaborate with each other.
Wow.
My government will continue to support the political institutions and devolved government in Northern Ireland. In consultation with all parties, measures will be brought forward to begin the process of repealing and replacing the Northern Ireland Troubles Legacy and Reconciliation Act 2023.
What is all this Northern Ireland stuff? Devolving something? There's an act that they want to remove, or I haven't heard about any of that. That's a little too nuanced for me. I don't know anything about this, but I'm curious.
Measures to modernize the Constitution will be introduced, including House of Lords reform, to remove the right of hereditary peers to sit and vote in the Lords.
Wow. Wow, they're really proposing a lot of changes to the government and the government structure. So they said hereditary right to vote in the House of Lords based on your lineage, who you're related to. That makes sense. But then again, we're listening to the king talk about this, and the king his position is solely based on his genetic lineage, what he's inherited. So that's funny that they're talking about taking that aspect away from the House of Lords, I think.
My ministers will strengthen the integrity of elections and encourage wide participation in the democratic process.
Okay.
The government will propose a modernisation committee of the House of Commons, which will be tasked with driving up standards, improving work practices, and reforming procedures.
Wow, a lot of reforms to the government, actually. This is pretty big.
My government will ensure a strong defence based on the North Atlantic Treaty Organization's common values of individual liberty, democracy, human rights, and the rule of law.
Okay.
Its commitment to NATO will remain unshakable. It will maintain a strong armed forces, including the nuclear deterrent.
Oh.
To ensure that the United Kingdom's defence capabilities are matched to the changing nature of global strategic threats, my government will conduct a strategic defence review.
Okay. This is talking about like the UK military. Another thing I don't really ever hear about.
My government will continue to give its full support to Ukraine and its people, and it will endeavour to play a leading role in providing Ukraine with a clear path to NATO membership.
Oh, wow. Okay.
My government will seek to reset the relationship with European partners and work to improve the United Kingdom's trade and investment relationship with the European Union.
Trade and investment. Has that relationship been, I don't know, strained between the UK and the rest of Europe? This is, again, I like how specific this is getting. And I guarantee you, right now, I feel like I'm one of the few Americans who even know about half this stuff, because this is not like topics that we hear about or talk about in America.
My ministers will seek a new security pact to strengthen cooperation on the mutual threats faced by the United Kingdom and the European Union. My government will play its part in trying to secure long-term peace and security in the Middle East. It is committed to a two-state solution with a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable and sovereign Palestinian state.
Okay.
Later this week, my government will host the European Political Community meeting at Blenheim Palace. The Queen and I look forward to our visit to Samoa alongside the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in October and our visit to Australia.
Oh, okay. It sounds like the king is just speaking now for himself, talking about his schedule in the future. That sounds like the end of the outline of the new UK government plan. Oh my gosh. I had no idea what to expect from this, and I have to say, I feel like I got a lot out of this. Almost too much to remember. This was basically bombarding me with every UK like problem and plan and solution coming up. All of which I've never really heard much about. I have to admit, I don't stay on top of UK politics very much. So this was really beneficial to me. I imagine this was really thought provoking to the UK public as well. This seems really useful, having the king kind of outline the government's plans. In the United States, it's usually just the president giving speeches, so this was kind of interesting for me as well. To see that this is something that comes from the king, that was different for me. And really well done. Good speech. Covered a ton of topics. A lot of stuff happening in the UK. I'm going to have to digest this for a while. But this was eye-opening, to say the least. I enjoyed this. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on the future of the UK, the government's new plans. Especially if you're from the UK, this means more to you. So that'd be fantastic to hear from people in the UK about all of this and what this means. If you agree with it or not, or if it sounds good, or any of that would be great. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to the UK and UK culture and learning things about the UK for the first time, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.